President Cyril Ramaphosa has been speaking this afternoon about violence and poverty in the country and how women are bearing, the brunt, the very worst of the levels of violence that we've been reporting on in this country, including rapes and intimate partner violence. He's now concluded the address by raising issues around how women in this country are basically dealing with a crisis that is created by men. The President has called for an end to the culture of silence in South Africa when it comes to the abuse of women. Let's take you back to where he was speaking. That's in Richmond in KwaZulu-Natal. Bring back in our reporter Karinda Jagmohan. And Karinda, there's still some activity there, the President giving interviews and the rest of it. But I wonder if the women of that community feel reassured that anything will change.
Indeed, well, for many women who are now starting to leave the premises, for them, it was quite interesting to see that they really wanted to see the President, and they're quite happy with what he said about gender-based violence especially. But of course, at the end of the day, it is of course issues that need to take into effect. He spoke about some matters regarding alcohol consumption, and I mean, that's what we have been seeing behind us in the same camp since the President left: alcohol consumption and smoking. And as a result, a lot of the women here left the marquee and are starting to leave through their high transport. So quite an interesting thing to see after the President leaves, what is actually left behind. Now, we were hoping to speak to the President just to get some confirmation of some of the matters that he raised, including new laws, he says, that have been in the legislature process. These include laws that will empower police to make arrests of alleged perpetrators of gender-based violence without a warrant, laws that will also ensure that people can speak out about issues of abuse of any person. In fact, it might be illegal then to stay silent. You might be considered an accomplice in that type of abuse if you are aware and you say nothing. So it is still to be made clear when these laws would actually be passed, when it will actually come into effect, and when or how we'll see changes on the ground. So of course, that was a major issue that he had to raise, because gender-based violence has been described as a pandemic the country is experiencing. We tried to speak to him. In fact, it was interesting, the female members of the media stood together hoping that he would at least give us a chance to have a word with him, but he was swiftly taken away in his convoy. So he's left this area currently, and it's really just cleaning up at this process. And the words he left behind, of course, is that violence and poverty is really holding women in this country back from progressing, from going forward. One thing to look forward to in KwaZulu-Natal, at least on the political front, is that it may come soon that the province will have its first female premier, if indeed Nomusa Dube from the ANC is sworn into legislature following the recent developments we've been seeing on the ground. And hopefully she can have some concrete moves going forward for women in the province, especially emancipating women from rural areas like this one, where there's a large number of female-headed households. They live in poverty around this area. I mean, in many parts there's not even proper developed roads. That is how poverty has risen in this Richmond area and the KZN Midlands. So for this community especially, they are looking forward to some kind of principle and assistance, tangible assistance they can get to relieve them from the poverty that they're experiencing that might also be leading to violence in their homes.
And there will also, Karinda, be an effort to take stock of what government has been able to do on the promises made at a presidential summit that was convened to deal specifically with gender-based violence. The President says that meeting will happen in November.
Indeed. So last year, the country had its first summit regarding gender-based violence and femicide, which brought together a number of role players with regards to issues surrounding women, issues surrounding abuse, and as a result, a number of principles were set down, targets that need to be achieved. This includes financial assistance, increasing the legal benefits, psychosocial benefits for women. Now, the second summit of that kind, gender-based violence and femicide, will happen in November this year, where there'll be discussions on what has been done so far, the principles that were decided upon at that first summit last year. How has various government role players or public stakeholders enacted on those principles? Where are the funds at in terms of assisting women? Have funds been sent out to women in need? And where are we in terms of legal and psychosocial services that women need to have, perhaps to escape the poverty, the situation of poverty they are in with their children, or the situation of violence they may be experiencing at home and don't know how to actually come out from that.
Karinda, Jagmohan, thank you very much for that update. Back in Richmond in KwaZulu-Natal.